Hey, Chanel here with another Sew Bit. Today we're going to talk about hand stitching, and what we're going to talk about is called the slip stitch. Slip stitch you'll see a lot in pattern instructions, and I'm also going to show you what a whip stitch is. I think it's called that. I just kind of made it up myself, so it's kind of more stitching. What I do, it's kind of faster. And think about hand stitching as what the couture designers do, and couture is the custom-made fine garments that the big designers do, and they're usually just one of a kind, or they might have just a small lot. And if you really looked inside all of them, they're hand stitched together in a lot of places, and somebody's got to do that. The machine factories aren't doing them. They're not mass produced. They're sewn sometimes individually, or couture, real couture is sewn each piece individually. There's no mass production at all in there, and they're hand stitched in a lot of places together. So when you're making yourself a garment, think of it that way. You're actually doing, a one-of-a-kind piece, and it should be, really fine-tuned. So in the instructions, I found slip stitch in a lot of places. So we have slip stitch here. They're actually making a collar, and they're saying to slip stitch the neck edge to the collar part to the neck edge here, and then there's another part here. They're making a cuff on this blouse, and it says slip stitch pressed edge over seam. So they're finishing off that cuff. I think I said collar, cuff, and they're slip stitching it around the edge. This is where, because this probably wouldn't be seen, only except for the inside, I would probably just do a whip stitch. And I'll show you the difference between the whip stitch and the slip stitch. And there's a lot of books out there on how to do different stitches, and everybody thinks, how do you do that? And I've never really studied it. I just kind of get by and just kind of think my goal is to stitch two pieces of fabric together, and in many cases for it not to show on the other side, and you just stitch it through, and you just pick up one little fiber of the fabric and pick it up, and then go through again, another little fiber, and you don't see it from the outside. And then sometimes your hand stitching, it doesn't matter. It depends on where it's at in the garment. It doesn't matter where it's, if you see it or not, because it's maybe in the lining or something like that. So the goal is always for that thread to anchor two pieces of fabric together. So there's many different ways to do it. There's a lot of cool stitches out there. And I always wanted to sit down and look at all the different stitches and practice them. There's one I really want to learn. It's called the chain stitch, and I know there's machines that do it, blind stitch type chain stitch, and doing a chain stitch thread tail, and I never learned how to do that. I did learn one time, but I didn't keep doing it, so I couldn't remember it, so I got to practice that again. Maybe I'll show that to you. But so I want to show you a slip stitch, and then a real quick, like a whip stitch is pretty much what I do most of the time. So here's a tip on threading the needle. When you just look at the needle eye right here, it kind of, because it's metal on here, you can't see the eye very well. But if you actually put white behind it, right here, you can see the eye much better. And then it makes it a lot easier to thread. So, I have to get my thing right here. So if you actually, I put this over the white cutting board, and I can just put it right through there, and then I pull the thread out, and there is the needles threaded right there. Also, if you ever seen these, this is a beeswax. You actually take your thread through here and draw it through. It will actually coat the thread with a slight layer of wax, and then it makes it it doesn't tangle all up like this. So what we're going to do is let's say this is in many cases this could be the collar going over onto the jacket, or a cuff going over. They usually say press under 5/8 and then use to stitch this down here. So what we're going to do is make a knot on the end of your thread, and you can actually hide the knot in the fold. So I actually start right here, and then I would hide the knot right in there. And then the goal is to pick up one little fiber of the thread and pick it up here and draw it through like here. Now the slip stitch is when you actually put the needle in the fold, and then it's going through. You see it's under that fold. It's going through, hiding under that fold, and then you pick up a little fiber. Call it one little of the fibers, and then you bring it up like that. So you just have to hide it under like that. It's kind of like a hide under and then a pick up a thread like that. So that's one way of slip stitching it. What I do is I like to just pull one of the fibers up and then whip it over like that. So it's just like a whip stitch, looks more like that. It's just, you see the stitch a lot. But if this is like under a collar or something like that, you don't see it. And the goal is for you not to see that red thread in here. I can see it slightly right there, but it hides right here. And then when you pull it this way, you don't really even see that it was hand stitched here. If you machine stitch it, you totally see it. But there's different ways of doing the stitch. So to hide it totally, you just hide it underneath that fold, bring it up. It's hard to do this with the camera here. See, and this got knotted, but I had it beeswax so I can pull the knot right back out like that. It helps it. Doesn't happen every time, but and then you just pick up a little bit of that thread, and you can pull it through here and then hide it. So then slip stitches, you don't see the stitch on either side. You might see like a little prick of the red right there, and then you go and hide it under there. So then I hid it under there, and you pick up another piece like that, and so on and so on. So whip stitch and slip stitch, just the #1 goal is to just anchor these two pieces together. See you at the next sew bit.